Meanwhile, New York's Attorney General is going to court to have the Trump Foundation dissolved. Barbara Underwood is suing the charitable foundation over what she claims is a pattern of persistent illegal conduct for more than a decade. She also wants to impose bans on Trump and his children, Donald Jr., Eric, and Ivanka, and prevent them from holding leadership roles in New York charities. For more on this, Peter Matthews joins us now from Los Angeles. He's a professor of political science at Cypress College. Peter, thanks for being with us. What
Thank you.
are the most serious violations here?
Well, some of them include using charitable donations, which are tax deductible to his foundation, using that money, for example, $100,000 to settle a lawsuit claim in his Mar-a-Lago estate, which was being sued. So this is a conflict between using charitable money for private gain. It's very similar to the conflict between using public office for your private gain as well. And that's happened quite often in what, as I say in my book, Dollar Democracy, with liberty and justice for some. In that book, I show how quite often money in politics has corrupted our system in many ways. And Mr. Trump has done some of that. Unfortunately, it appears that way. In this case, charitable money for private gain.
Barbara Underwood was interviewed on Amanpour and said it wasn't unusual for a charity to be found with these violations and that they do go after cases like these. But how do you think these particular violations rank on a bigger scale?
Well, that's difficult to say. It depends how you look at it. But I think the main question here is someone who's in a public trust office like the presidency has to be above and overboard, very careful about how they are perceived and what they do with non-governmental funding and sources of funding. And this is the problem between private interest and public interest. And this has been pointed out by Aristotle, all the way from him to Thomas Jefferson to modern-day philosophers, who argue that someone in a public trust office such as the presidency must be really only making decisions that benefit the entire United States, the country he serves, not his private family, not private entities that would benefit him as an individual. And this is very important for President Trump to note and to be very strictly careful about not doing.
Do we know why this was not pursued by Underwood's predecessor?
We don't really know exactly why, but you know that Underwood's predecessor, Mr. Schneiderman, was also under an investigation, for at least he was been charged with certain violations in terms of his conduct with women. So we don't know if that made him vulnerable and decided not to pursue this type of, investigation or not. I'm not really sure why he didn't do it. But now we have Miss Attorney General Barbara Underwood who's actually pursuing it, and she's known as a very straight shooter, a very balanced and fair Attorney General and investigator. So I think that she has quite a bit of credibility, and the president might be in a bit more hot water now once again. Could actually weigh down his presidency. He's being investigated in so many ways right now. That's not good for a public official to have his hands so full with those things rather than looking out for the common public interest, like creating jobs here, for example, and settling the problem in the Korean Peninsula. Those are public interest issues he should be focused on. This just distracts him, and it's very important, of course, that the Attorney General get to the truth of this.
And I agree, this is definitely detracting from the president's agenda, but how else would he face any particular sort of repercussions for this, and what are the next steps in all of this?
Well, certainly he could face repercussions if he's found to have violated these laws against this kind of using the money. And the repercussions are that, when it comes to the people who believe that he should possibly be impeached by having articles of impeachment voted upon by the House of Representatives, this is just more fuel to the fire to say, here's another example of not necessarily criminal activity, but high crimes and misdemeanors as defined in the Constitution, which doesn't refer to regular crimes of regular folks who committed crimes stealing or robbing a bank. This has to do with a violation of the public trust. Abuse of power, for example, obstruction of justice, those kinds of things can be utilized to be defined as high crimes and misdemeanors. In this case now, misuse of charitable funds for private gain. It could also be construed in that way. And it just gives more ammunition to the House of Representatives to come forth with articles of impeachment, which I don't think will be done until and if the Democrats take power in the House. I don't see the Republicans wanting to push this or pursue possible impeachment, but this is something the president's not welcome by him, I'm sure.
All right, Peter Matthews joining us from LA, political science professor with Cypress College. Thanks for being with us.